I think I was talking about you could unmute and mute, but that should be okay. And I think we are live, so all the best. Leave the floor to you all. Bye.
Hello, hi, good evening, everyone. Again, and this is Samson here, and I'm a alumni of Montfort Institution. I hope all of you are able to hear me. Yes.
Yes.
So I'm an alumni of Montfort, and I'm presently working in St. Joseph's Indian Composite PU College as a lecturer. And I wanted to introduce all these people whom you see on the screen, starting with the moderator, that is Anil, the one who is wearing, specs. Both of them are wearing specs with the blue T-shirt. Now you will see that's Anil, and he's a moderator for today's session. He's a counseling psychologist, trainer, group therapist, lecturer, supervisor, and acclaimed performing artist. So he's worked in multiple places. He's worked as a student counselor, adjunct faculty at Jain University, and he's also consultant. Has been working as a consultant for India's leading, what do I say, employee assistant programs. And along with that, he's also an acclaimed Bharatanatyam artist and a theater performer. Did I miss out anything, Anil? All right. Okay, cool. Then we
Thank
have
you, Samson.
the three bubbling panelists, starting with Rebecca. So she is finished her master's in counseling psychology, and she's also a certified EMDR therapist, and she's pursuing a PhD at Christ University. She's the founder of Begin Again Counseling and Care Center, and she's also the marriage and family therapist over there. She's been practicing for almost 12 to more years in therapy and counseling. And she has published quite a lot of papers, which I'm not going to tell you. I want her to do more of the talking to know more about her. And then we have Tendril. So Tendril is the one, yeah, she says hi over there. That's Tendril. So Tendril is practicing psychological counselor and trainer with 4 to 5 years of experience. She has multiple hours of what do I say, training and sessions. So you know it, right? And then she's also was a part of Montfort, and she specialized in education and counseling, school counseling. And she's also an audio kinesthetic trainer. She specialized in art-based therapy, which includes movement, art, and rhythm, storytelling, and more of that. And what else? Yes, and she's a graduate member and counseling section member of the British Psychological Society UK. So that's about her. And she's also certified in ethics and Buddhist psychological practice. And she's been also awarded the Best Psychological Counselor by the National Leadership Awards 2020. So that's about Tendril. Is that okay, Tendril? Did I tell too much or too little? Okay. Then we have Kedar. So I didn't have to break my head to tell about Kedar because I know Kedar personally as well. So Kedar is an individual and group therapist and a Jain professor, forever student by heart, is what he says. I didn't say it. That's what he says. Okay. And currently, Kedar is working with Hankman Institution Outreach Unit, and through his work, though he works with various organizations, it could be educational institution, corporate organization, NGOs, and many others. Okay. And he initially started his career as an engineer, like any other, a lot of engineers, wherein they always wanted to leave engineering and do something else, right? So here we have Kedar, who was a software engineer. Then he found his passion in care and communication, and wanted to impact people. So he finished his master's again from Montfort in counseling. And here we have them to share their knowledge with us. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Sam, for such a warm introduction and setting this context for this evening. And a warm welcome to all wonderful panelists and also the members offline or online, however you would want to, however you're part of this session. I'm pleased to be discussing, hearing, and also see what could be some of the learnings that I could be taking from the three panelists here. So I would just start with Or each one of you can take your turns with this one question that I want to begin with. As counseling psychologists, and this session is focusing on independent practitioners, right? So, what do you think has been a boon and a bane?
Boon and a bane for
Being an independent practitioner.
hmm,
Because see, I'm thinking about this session not only in terms of throwing insights about how a practice would be, but also talk about certain challenges and look at what could be the takeaway for the members who are present here in terms of when they decide about independent practice. What are the things that they need to keep in mind, or how to network, take support from each other? So this has been the idea for today's session. So on that note, I would also ask about certain challenges, maybe downhill
yeah, yeah.
experiences, and so on. Yeah. So as an independent practitioner, what has been your boon and bane?
Can I start, if that's
Yes,
okay?
please, Tendri. Yes.
Okay. I think a comparison would be helpful because I've been an independent practitioner and also a student counselor. I mean, currently I'm a student counselor working in a school, so I've been both. I think one of the boon of being an independent practitioner is, you are able to take time off when you think you're not doing the best to your clients, right? Not transferring what is not okay onto them. So that kind of a space is a boon, and being able to choose your clients is a boon, right? Where I'm able to say, hey, this is something that's not matching between you and me, right? My values and your values are different, so maybe I will refer you to somebody else. So that is another boon. Third, I think it's a boon and a bane. After online, the boon is I've been able to do more of independent practice from wherever I am, and this whole logistic things has come down. Earlier, I needed like a office space, a well curated space for healing. A lot of logistics was required for it. Timing, session, clients not able to reach on time, traffic, a lot of things. So the boon right now due to online is that anybody from anywhere is able to take sessions. And I look at me, I'm just sitting on my bed, and then this is happening. So this is the boon. The bane, again, I already mentioned the logistic parts during offline. Another thing is when there may be times when you don't have many clients at all. So in a whole day, you may be seeing only one person, or in a week you may be seeing only a very few number of clients. Whereas when you're working somewhere else, the organization makes sure you have the enough number of clients or enough practice. Then again, another bane is finding the right supervisor when you are an independent practitioner, keeping up with your supervision. That is, I mean, monetary also. So how much you make and then how much you pay your supervisor. How many times will you be able to meet their availability, our availability, a lot of things, that area. So these are some of the things I could come up with.
Wonderful.
Obviously, you can't, I mean, you not reject per se, but you won't be able to tell clients when you don't want to see them when you're not an independent practitioner, because the organization expects you to see whoever wants to meet you whenever.
Right, right. I think you gave a lot of points that I was intending to ask as questions later. So I'm glad that you brought up about the competency and looking out for clients whom you think are suitable to your areas of counseling that you're affiliated with or concerned with, and at the same time talking about you're not forced to work in a particular routine, and you have the liberty to probably relax at times or maybe space out or take break and be more or less and then be aware of yourself, your capacities, and sometimes it's okay to not
Yeah.
have that routine or a strict practice like that happens in an organization, right? Wonderful. So I would like to hear from Rebecca.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I think how my independent practice started was like my own personal journey with establishing Begin Again was because I kind of became a mum. So I couldn't see myself spending a lot of time away from my newborn, and I wanted to kind of spend a lot of time with her, and I wanted to kind of be there, like mentally, physically. And so the independent practice kind of started out of that already kind of homeboundness. And so one of the biggest blessings and boon I could say for me having the independent practice was that I could spend that time at home. I could kind of be with my daughter. When she needed me, I could kind of work around her schedules and work around schedules with my partner, and I had a lot of flexibility. I also was able to kind of tone down the number of sessions I was doing per day because I knew I needed to be elsewhere. I could do sessions only in the evening. I could do sessions only in the morning. I could do sessions only on weekends. And I had all that flexibility to kind of play around with all of that. And I think that as that evolved and now as she's gotten older, the other big benefit is that because I'm in private practice, I'm able to do my PhD as well. I think that if I had a full-time job, I wouldn't be able to sustain my research work. I wouldn't be able to sustain kind of all the other stuff that goes into running doing my PhD and kind of studying and learning for that. So that has been the biggest benefit. Like I think that it's been perfect like that. But I think also one of the like at least initially when I was setting up my practice, the isolation was not great, like being working alone, working like I had to hustle, I had to get my clients, I had to get my finances, I had to be my PR person, I had to run my Instagram page, I had to do it all, like literally. I was a one-man show, and of course now as I've evolved, I've been able to get more people on board. But initially it was like it was very isolating, and so it was hard to build a community of other like-minded therapists around myself, because all the other therapists I knew so far were already affiliated with other institutions and schools and EAPs, and no one else was in the same space as me. So it took me a while to get a community of other therapists around me who were also independent practitioners, who were also moms, who were also kind of juggling lots of other stuff along with having a practice. So I think the isolation wasn't great, but I think through that, like I learned how important it was to have and build that community and really value it. But yeah, I think that was otherwise I think it's been great. Like I would recommend having a practice of your own if you feel like you have the competency for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think there's so much of reassurance there when it comes to private practice or independent practice. And I know having so many years of experience and talking about different ups and downs that you have experienced, and also highlighting about the progress or the good part of your journey can be definitely motivating for a lot of members who are attending this session. Interesting. Yes. So, Kedar, your thoughts?
I think it shouldn't be boon. It should be more of a luxury. And it is a luxury to have a lot of the things that they said. And adding to that, I think so. I work with corporate organizations. So there's me, who I go through. I mean, this is my work at HNI, Franklin Institute. So this corporate organization, and there's me and HNI. Then there is the corporate, and then there's employees. Right? So there's HRs and the CEOs who hired us, and then there's the employees, right? And so it's like almost like a triangle in terms of the power distribution, right? But when it comes to independent practice, it's me and it's the client, right? And there's no other person who tells that this should be how your session should be. This is what you should do. These are the timings, yeah. And so one of the things that it's very stark for me in private practice, independent practice, is that it's our time. And I don't want to say, I'm very careful when I say it's our time, not my time. It's not, it's our time. It's mine and the client's time. It's both of our agreed time. And in this, there is a more power that I hold, that I can say that no, this time doesn't work for me. Yeah, that's something I have to be very mindful of while working with the clients. But other than that, there's a lot more flexibility, a lot more control. Um, um, there is, my terms are valued in some ways, whereas it's I'll have to I'll have to be I'll have to follow someone else's times other than the clients. Yeah, um, that's one. Um, but but the con or the bane is that no, it's when things go well, it goes well, right? When you have something established, it's nice. Really, it's really beautiful. Everything comes, flows in. You've worked through things and everything is in place. But when it's not in place, it sucks, right? It's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of struggle, and it's very lonely. It's lonely in the sense that you don't have a community to work with. You don't have clients coming in. You have to go and like Rebecca was saying, you have to go and find the clients. It's a one-man show, and that's not easy.
Absolutely right. When you talk about building a client base, it's the challenge. But before I look at highlighting those aspects of her practice, let's begin with the anxieties, the initial anxiety where each and every practitioner would experience is about, like Kedar mentioned, it's our time, but how do I schedule that time? Or like Tendril mentioned, the space becomes so important, right? What space is the right space? And how do I hold that space for the client and myself as or a therapeutic alliance there? Or there could also be the anxiety about what are certain protocols, do's and don'ts that we need to, and will I be able to hold on to that do's and don'ts and ensure that I practice well. These could be some of the the anxiety pop-ups that keeps coming in every individual's mind, right? And I often hear that from a lot of students or even practitioners who have been affiliated to organizations but then decide that let me give a try about practicing independently. So what are your thoughts on this? Maybe we can begin with Kedar because you've mentioned about our time, and then I would go to Tendril to talk about the space, and let's hear from Rebecca as the final thoughts about how she's been able to sustain this whole practice for some years.
What's the question again, Anil? It's the
So when
do's
you
and
talk about, yes, the do's and don'ts and the initial anxiety of how people would wonder whether they would be able to begin their practice or not, and what kind of protocols have to be followed, the confusions that happens in one's mind, that goes in one's mind.
it's a lot like chaos in the beginning, and from this
Absolutely.
chaos you have to create some order. I'm really sorry. Jungian work is a part of who I am. It's not the only thing I use in my work, but it's a part of who I am. The terms. So it's a lot of chaos at the beginning, and then from that you have to piece in and sieve order from it. Um, it you have to sit down and think about a lot of things. You think about well, what is you mean? Why are you doing private practice? What do you get from it? Right? Is it just money? Is it more than that? Um, the timings, the type of clients you want to work with, the mode of doing like individual, group, education, marriage, family, and so on and so forth. What's your what? Who are you in the community of counselors and therapists? It's a lot to think about, a lot to understand, and it takes time. It helps um, if you have a supervisor, right kind of supervisor. I don't know. I wouldn't say right supervisor, but some starting place, someone who can help you, guide you. Yeah.
So, Kita, maybe can the audience know what is the one thing that you did or helped you to channelize the chaos that you experienced in the beginning?
Mentors and a community. It's very ironic because I don't think I would ever call myself as an independent practitioner um, because I am who I am, or my practice is what it is because of the mentors I've had, because of well-wishers. I mean, in this field, like someone who's established, and the community that I've been in, I am what I am because of them, and so they've helped me quite a lot.
So you mean to say having support system and probably interacting and identifying how to begin your practice would be a great way to start. Okay, thanks, Kedar. Tendril, what are your thoughts?
And
Yes, just
I really like your smile. It's I really want to look at hear you. Yeah, I'm sorry.
thank you, Kedar. Just adding on one point to what Keda was talking about, the initial anxieties of practice, especially understanding boundaries, right? When we talk about this, our time, that boundary of our time comes with a lot of things, lot of chaos, actually. I still remember one of my first few sessions right out of college. I started as an independent practitioner, actually, and the first 4 years was only independent practice. So first few sessions, within 2 or 3 months of practice, I remember there was a client who was supposed to come and meet me. So I traveled like 20 kilometers to find a counseling space in one of the colleges in Chennai. And then I had told the client, you can meet me there at this particular time. We scheduled the session over a phone call, and the client doesn't show up even after 45 minutes of me sitting in there. That room costs 30% off the fee that I take from the client, whether a client comes or not. When I've booked it, there are other people in line who are waiting to take it after me. I think when the client arrives after 1.5 hours of me waiting there, I still remember that moment when I took courage to tell them that you have to pay me for that session. I literally practiced about 25 times to say it out, because your anxieties are, what if I lose this client? This is like the second client I've got. What if I don't get anybody? They'll go and tell people that she's asking for money for a session that's not done. These are some of the chaos that goes on. And so actually having a boundary, so now I have a system where before my first session I take 20 solid minutes of a phone call with my client, explaining everything as a part of therapeutic boundaries. Everything, when they can text me, what we can do over text, what should happen in a session, what timing, fee, if you don't come up, what happens, if you come after half an hour, what happens, what if it extends. All of this goes into the talking and understanding of our time. So it's different for different people, actually, not like one. Now, relating this to the logistics part, right? Finding the right space. So I started my practice in a counseling room that a college used to offer. And they had a room, and anybody can book it, and you can use that room. The problem with logistics is that room wouldn't be cleaned. I used to pull out tissue papers, clean the table, the chair before my client arrives, and then started off there. Then, when you think of having your own office space, the next logistic issue is which part of the city. How do you decide which part of the city? How do you know whether, if I do it next to my home, if people will turn up? What if they say it's not accessible by bus or car, or you don't have parking space? So there's a lot, and that's all the outside. Now inside the space, what should I put? Should I have like a cushion, a sofa, or just a chair? And how many people will actually turn up in, like, will I have families walking in, will I have couples? So should I just have two chairs or multiple? And if I have children, then what do I do? And then when I became a arts-based practitioner, then I started thinking, now how will we move around? How are we going to dance in this space? If it's only a 10 by 10, hardly when you put your hands out there are walls touching your hands. So how do we do the movement part of it? It's trial and error in multiple spaces, and failing in those spaces. Sometimes it wouldn't make sense. Then you're like, okay, fine, you know what, I can't go 20 kilometers every day, so I'll have a practice next to my home. And then it's I think it's more of a trial and error. There is no one thing that you can come up with. It really depends on, but one thing I realized, it should be in the comfort of the therapist, because the more time spent in that space is by the therapist. So if you're not comfortable in a healing space, I couldn't bring out healing in my clients. when I was not comfortable in that space. So it was very important that I kind of fit in there well. I know where things are and how I can engage them into healing. Then it kind of worked out. But there was never a perfect space, I would say, even till the end, till until I moved here or something. There was never a perfect space. We were still finding it. And now online, I think any space is okay. Some days I'm in the balcony, some days I'm at the table, some days I'm on the bed, and it all works out. So that's been the logistics and the space part of independent practice.
Absolutely. So, Tendon, something that struck me in your narration was one was, in the process of setting up the space. No, it's not that you set up at one point in time and then that's forever. You eventually, as you evolve as a therapist, so your whole dimension of the space would also evolve. At the end of the day, what matters is your comfort as a therapist. So, I think, like we often tell our clients, right, until unless you're not comfortable with yourself, no matter who is trying to comfort you, you may not be able to embrace it. I think this applies here also, that as a therapist, if we are not okay with our space, then the client may also find discomfort there,
Yeah.
right? That's a valid point. Thank you there. Yeah. So, Rebecca, I know that I can say that you come up with many years of experience, and I'm sure the way you began to the way you are working at this moment, I'm sure there would be a lot of difference, right? So, what were the initial anxieties right from the space, or do's and don'ts, and how did you battle those chaos?
Right. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me was like it's a little bit of like what comes first, right? Like what do I put first? Do I get the space first or do I get the clients first? It's always like should I wait till I get the client and then get the space, or get the space first and then get the client? Like if I get the space, then what if I don't have enough clients to sustain the space? Like so, that was always something that I was juggling with. So something that I kind of worked out right at the beginning was I kind of told myself that I'll wait till I get 10 clients. And once I got 10 clients, I would then kind of freeze on a space. So I didn't kind of invest in a space first, because it wasn't going to make financial sense for me to, kind of pay rent in a place when I was having like one or two clients. So, so that was a number that I had in my head. I said I'd wait till I get 10 steady clients who I was kind of seeing regularly, and then I would have enough. It would make enough. It wouldn't break even, but still it would make sense for me to have that physical space. It would justify that. And so once I got to that number 10, then I kind of started looking for a space. And I think another thing about the space as well was that I think there is this whole idea about the space being very about it being perfect. But I think in a city like Bangalore, we deal with a lot of imperfections in our spaces. Like it's not ideal. And I think for a lot of people, the space is, like how Tendru was saying, like the space kind of evolves with you. Like, so I had one space that I had that had a very noisy door, an extremely noisy main door. So the main door would make like this big jangle, and then people would enter and meet the receptionist. But that door was very loud, and I never noticed it because it kind of became like it was like white noise for me. I never noticed it because people were constantly coming in and out. But then one of the clients I was doing trauma work with suddenly kind of had like this kind of trauma reaction to that sound. And then I was like, oh no, I have to be very kind of careful about the sounds in my space as well. So, it's kind of like these small things you become mindful of as you kind of see, and your practice grows and the kind of clients you meet grows. And like Tendru was saying, like initially I had a space which was more set up for individual clients, but then I realized that I was doing a lot of couples therapy. So then the partner would always have to pull up like a plastic chair, and I realized that that was not perfect. Like, but again, it was such a small space, and it wasn't like like you didn't have an option. But then I kind of had to think about how I could get matching chairs, and all these things are there. But I think that the space needs to justify the practice. I think that is what I learned. Um, and I think starting, one of the biggest anxieties that I had was, would I get to that 10 number? I always had, I have this number 10. What if I never get to it? Then what happens? It was a process. It didn't come like overnight. Like it did take like a few months, few good, like almost 8 to 10 months for actually to get to that number. But I think that I think that made sense for me to kind of do that, to have like a number in mind and then move to the physical space. But definitely the anxiety at the start is like, will I be able to sustain it? Will I have more than 10 clients or will I like stop there? Uh, and yeah, I think, that was one of the, the big concerns for me was, apart from that, like another concern for me also was like, I always looked at like my partner obviously has a normal IT job. And, I was like, whenever he takes leave, he gets like, it's like he applies for leave and he gets paid for it. But if I go on leave, I'm not getting paid for anything. So I can take 2 months off, but I'm like not getting paid for any of that time off. So it was always a little bit like heartbreaking that, if I don't work, then I'm not getting paid. And that's a little bit of a hard thing to kind of deal with, that, if you are taking any time off, it's on you. That's it. So yeah, I think you kind of get used to those things. And over time, you realize it doesn't make sense to just keep working in those spaces when you don't work is also important. Yeah, and I realized that taking time off is important as well. Yeah.
Just want to add, I just want
Yeah.
to add that I think it's one thing to not be paid for when you're taking a holiday, but it's another thing to not get paid for in case you're in a crisis or in a tough
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was thinking about was that space is very important, and I'm I'm a Jungian psychodynamic practitioner, so I think about like the small things. Like for example, in what Rebecca was saying, if one in a couples, right? There's a therapist in couples. If one of the members is sitting on a good chair, and the other person gets a plastic chair, what does that speak about the relationship, right? And so things like that is very, very important, and something you pick up over the course of time, I suppose.
That was what struck me when Rebecca was talking. In the last space that I had, it was so hard to decide whether I should get individual sofas or one together where couples could sit together.
You're forcing them to sit in the same sofa, right? You're a couple
Yeah,
now.
so
You have to
I
sit in the
thought
same
of it, and yes, and after like I don't know weeks of thinking and walking in and out of the furniture shop, I decided, okay, we'll get individual chairs, no matter whether they're a couple or a family. Let them have their individual healing space there. They don't have to sit together, at least here. Probably they are forced to sit together in other places. So every little thing matters actually. How far is the table from where they're sitting? How far is the water from where they are sitting? Do they have access to other things? Like if they want to write something, should I have paper? How much stationery should I have? What all should I include? Yeah, I think it the list is never stable. It keeps changing as our practice changes as well, like Anil pointed out.
So, like Rebecca mentioned, being mindful of every little detail that each client would bring into the session probably gives you greater insights as to how to continue with your practice, right? So, along with that, I did hear Kedar, Tendril, and Rebecca talk about the clientele, right? So that's something that I have also heard from a lot of members, the difficulty in building this clientele, right? So what are some of the practices or suggestions that you would suggest or give to our audience members in order to sustain our practice, be it financially and professionally?
Okay. My first step, I still remember, was just go print a couple of business cards with my name and number and calling myself a practitioner. And these are some of the things that I do. That was my first thing when I decided I'm going to start practice. Second is, I think, first let our own family and friends know we exist. Right? Not for them to come in, but for them to refer, tell other people. So if someone's looking for a therapist, do remember I exist. And kind of keep pestering them that you exist is the business card, friends, family, and use of a bit of social media, kind of reminding people that, hey, I exist, I exist, I exist. But I think what mostly really worked out is the word of mouth that the clients who came in told others. It took me a year and a half to understand. Most of my client, around 80% of my clientele, came because someone referred me who was my client than anybody else or elsewhere. Only the other 20% really came from probably looking me up on social media or randomly finding me from somewhere and giving a call, hey, I saw your name on Google or something like that. But 80% definitely because a client came to me, then they told their friend or somebody who was going through some issue in their life, and then they actually come. So one thing I understood is, for people to kind of trust in therapy and the therapist, it requires a testimony. They want to know somebody has gone through a therapeutic phase and it has really helped them. Otherwise, they're still in that dilemma. Okay, I'll come for one session. Oh, you will take this much money. What will you do in 45 minutes? They are in constant judgment. And for the second session, probably, they don't even turn up because nothing happened in the first session for them. I mean, as they expected, right? They don't understand we are building rapport. They're like, why I have to pay you this much for you and to me to become friends? So what? Why am I telling you all of this and going away? No, I'm just being very raw, but these were some of the experiences. So I think friends and family referrals, and then it should be our clients telling others. And then it actually spreads. So that worked for me.
Absolutely right. The trust your client has on the therapist, and word of mouth would definitely add greater value than any other medium. That's right. So I'd like to hear from Rebecca and then over to Kedar.
Sorry, Rebecca, just
Yeah,
one more
no.
thing I forgot to tell is about also for both Kedar and Rebecca spoke about network, because this journey is very lonely. It is also, so let's say my classmates and my batchmates and juniors and seniors from both the colleges that I went to are also another set of people who've played a big part in me getting clients. So their friends and their family and their acquaintances were some of the first few people who came in. So keeping that system in place is also very important for client acquisition. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a couple of things I think are very, very significant in kind of growing your the client base. And at least for me, it was that like initially I had kind of signed up with a couple of EAP providers who kind of referred clients as an affiliate. I'd signed up to them. And of course, like I think I'm not sure what the process is to become an affiliate for an EAP provider, but I think that they did have like a certain amount of years of experience and a certain specialization. So so I signed up with I was for a while with as an affiliate for a couple of EAP providers, and so I would get like a lot of for a long time about 80 to 90% of the people referred to me were from the EAP providers, and the rest were because I had like a clinic space that was shared with other, other like a doctor, a physiotherapist, and there were people. There was a lot of foot traffic in that place, so a lot of people who generally who would just be like, oh, what's this room? And then they'd be like, oh, okay, this looks interesting. And then they'd just peep in and they'd be like, oh, this is a therapist room. Like, so, okay. So then they'd make like a mental note. So I think even where your clinic space is, if it is in a place that has, in general, a lot of foot traffic, it just builds a lot of people who just come in. Hey, I just wanted, like, what do you do? And then a lot of people would just chat. Like sometimes if I was just sitting in the clinic out of sessions, people just come and just chat, like, oh, what do you do? And, what are you doing here? So that is some of the things, like, becoming an affiliate with some EAP providers. The other thing is that having your own niche is very important. Having your own kind of like, almost like something that you're like an area of specialization that you are really competent in, you're really confident in. And being able to say that, being quite unapologetic about that area of specialization. So having that kind of you may think it's limiting, but actually it's not. It's just it makes you like almost like a specialist in your area, which is great for getting more clients or building a client base. So very early on, I realized that I wasn't very good with working with children and adolescents, and I wasn't very good with working with addictions or clinical populations, and I figured that out quite early on. And so I realized that, but I did know that I had a good way of dealing with couples. I was able to do that. I was able to handle the stress and the intensity of couple sessions. So I thought, okay, this is something that I was good at. So I kind of branched very specifically into that area. And so when I started my private practice, I wouldn't take on people, although the temptation was there, especially when I was growing my practice. People would say, "Hey, would you see my child? He's 8 years old." I'd be like, "Oh no, they are paying people. Can I take them on?" But I'd be like, "No, I am a marriage and family therapist and I don't work with children." And in that process, what I did was I started building other practitioners' practices. So other people who would work with children, I would refer all the time. I would refer to them and say, "Hey, I'm sending you this person." And so I think that one of the big things that we need to remember is that when we invest in building other practitioners' practices, ours grows kind of organically and out of that kind of joy of building other people's practices. So I always find it very, very useful in having a bunch of people whom I trust, I know, and I just kind of I kind of say that these people are really good, please go to them. And I think that the practice also, how we set it up, having the psychiatrists, the clinical psychologists, all these people are very important because they had their own practices as well. Incorporating them into my practice was really helpful to grow all of our practices kind of organically. Because if I needed someone who needed assessments, I would send them to to the clinical psychologist. And if we needed someone who needed medication, we would send them to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist would get clients who needed therapy. They would come to me. They needed clinical assessments. They would go to the clinical psychologist. And so in that process, there was a very natural growth for all of us. And I think that building other practitioners' practices is just like a really amazing way to network, and just being very open with, "Hey, I don't work with these people, but please go to this person. They are really good." And you see that kind of coming back as well, because people are then able to refer people back to you saying that, "Hey, Rebecca I'm working with so and so's kid. You're a marriage and family therapist. Can you handle the parenting stuff?" Perfect. And then we know there is no kind of this is my client, this is your client. No, we all kind of have our own spaces. We do our work, and we all kind of get along. And eventually, what my vision for having this practice was that we would get to a point where we could all kind of do our bit for a person, fit in our own areas of specialization, and give kind of a holistic treatment plan, treatment outcomes, and kind of overall meet client goals. And that was the kind of goal of having all of us having our own kind of specializations and niches. But I think that if there's one way to grow a practice, it is growing other people's practices. Yeah, that's my take on it.
It's a very strong insight, I must say, Rebecca, when you talk about one being open about your competency, your expertise, about your expertise, and also be able to generously say that this is not my cup of tea and probably refer them to others. And this would encourage others also to refer clients to related to your concerns, right? And probably helping each other. So this is a wonderful community of work,
And I
right?
think one of the ways in which I got to build a community of other therapists was to kind of get in touch with people who referred people to me. So what I would do is, like, if someone said, "Hey, I got your number from so and so," I'd be like, "Oh, can I get their number?" Or I would find them on social media, or I'd find them on Practo, and I kind of just message them and say, "Hey, I got so and so. They came from you. Thanks. And tell me a little bit about your practice." And that kind of built a lot of friendships, actually, because otherwise you get isolated, right? And yeah, Practo is another good way to get clients. Yeah.
Yes, and thanks for highlighting on, like Tendril was also mentioning, it's such an isolated work. Yet we have a community around this isolation. We need to keep falling back at this community or the network that is again built by our own selves as independent practitioners. Okay, thank you. Kedar, your thoughts?
I was nodding quite a lot with what both of them said, but also, I mean, specifically with what Rebecca was saying about a community or giving back. It's not just your work that you're building, but you're building someone else's, and it's interdependent. Um, um, I don't know about. I get it, and so I remember being a part of Davidson. I'm not sure if you know him. Davidson was one of my seniors, and he opened a clinic in a space, and there was the notion that no, you put out flyers or you put up a board, and people see and walk in, and I see a lot of merit to that and value to that. But that's not something that I would do specifically. Now I'm wondering why won't I do that? Um, or why won't I have conversations with people? I mean, I will, uh, but probably because I work primarily online at the moment, and so maybe that plays some role in it. Or I'm working with people who are at some place in where they want to, where they are in their self work journey. Yeah. But I think other than that, I think it's just going back a bit rather than just to develop, to get to a place of sustaining your clientele. I think it's to start somewhere. A lot of people are very, very hesitant. They keep telling a lot of people, let's just start, right? And at the very least, there's something that you get, right? If not money, right? And money is one of them, but if not that, there's a lot that you get. And you start with just one client. Just start though, and try to figure out who are you as a therapist. What is your style? What do you like? Like, what kind of people do you work with, and more importantly, why do you want to work with those kind of people? Yeah, and in that you build your own niche. Yeah, and I think the last thing is, I mean, it's a lot about keeping at it. And you will have lows and you'll have highs, and they're never going to be constant, I suppose. But keep at it. Keep at it. Yeah.
Right, thanks, Kedar. Something that, to put in a nutshell, what I understand and gather here is that just begin somewhere and you will be able to lead to wherever you want to be, the space that you would want to see yourself in. And another aspect, important aspect, is trying to be affiliated or maybe having a network from with an institution or an organization to build your clientele can be a good launch pad, right? And then you can actually open your own wings in whatever capacities you would want to, right? Thank you for that. So as we are talking about independent practice, I do remember Tendril talking about responsibility for it's, and also Kedar mentioning about our time. And this is definitely a challenging and a difficult topic, I would say, because we would not know how much of responsibility we need to take for our practice or for our client. Because when it comes to an organization, we have set rules, or we have this whole organization or colleagues or a mentor and so on, who can always, to whom we can always rely upon, lean back, and that gives a sense of confidence, right? But when it comes to independent practice, how much of responsibility would be so much? What have been your experiences and challenges, or maybe something that has helped you? I'm sure it would be a good takeaway for the audience.
Can you repeat, Anil? I think
Yeah. See, we when it comes to organizations, we have colleagues, we have a team, maybe a clinical head or a counseling head, and so on. Or maybe in an education institution, we may have a principal or chief counselor, something like this. But when it comes to independent practice, right, we do not have anyone. It's just we, the whole and soul of our practice. And in such spaces, it becomes extremely challenging to understand whether the responsibility that you're taking is sufficient enough or not? Or is there something that you're doing wrong? Is there something that you need to enhance? Or how can you, to whom can you lean back? Or how can you look back at your own practice? So all these kind of confusions do arise, right? So how do you think one can address these challenges?
When you are the authority in an independent practice, and it's to be taken with a lot of insight and on how do you impact them, to what extent do you impact them, and so I think I can't stress enough on the importance of being in therapy. It's a dire must, and in supervision, it helps. When I tell people often that in other professions you have people you work with. I mean, not just like a boss, but like you have a team to work with, and you can go and ask doubts, right? And this profession doesn't have that, but supervision is a workaround, and so it's very important. I would, coming from my experience, I would say maybe look at a group supervision rather than individual supervision, because you're getting insights from a lot of people, and also helps with building a community. But therapy and supervision is the front foremost that's on my mind.
Right. I think that's a strong emphasis that we often hear and also would advocate how personal therapy and supervision is so important. Maybe can I take it as your supervisor could be, or a mentor could be, a person whom you can lean back and take support and maybe reflect on the responsibility that you're holding on in your own space, right? Holding for you as well as your client. Would that make sense?
Yeah, like somewhere I want to say, the meaner the better, right? Like the meaner the supervisor, the better for you and for your client. Like rip the band-aid off.
Absolutely.
Like you need to know what you're doing wrong. There's no sugarcoating it, because you're dealing with someone else's life here, right? And it's not about, I mean, as a therapist, my feelings will get taken care of when I go to therapy, right? But I would like to know what I'm doing. I mean, so I don't want to be told that this is what you're doing right and this is what you're doing wrong. But I would like to be told, see this. I mean, explore this. Think about this. Yeah, in that way, not this is what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Okay.
That was so beautiful, Kedar. Just adding on to what he pointed out, I think the personal or the inner journey makes a lot of sense and importance when it comes to responsibility. Why I'm stressing on this point is because it is more important to know our values as therapists. That is like the core foundation of everything else, right? What are my values when I sit on that chair and I'm trying to heal people who are coming to me or working with them? So are things still in alignment with my values? And the moment I realize it's not, then that is the point I realize to take help from outside. And while keeping personal therapy and supervision on constantly, this is one place where we can, kind of align and no, otherwise it's very confusing. We don't know where we are falling off or where we are right, where we are not. Because each client comes with a different need and requirement, and every journey is different with everybody. So I think this alignment in inner journey, because as a beginning independent practitioner, this was something that I was not able to get into. I wouldn't know what really is working, what is not working, and why I've taken this client and why healing is not happening. Right? And then, after a couple years of practice and understanding, okay, I first need to make sure where I stand so that I can make sure what I'm giving makes sense to my client. And like how Rebecca beautifully pointed out, right? The niche, like letting people know this is only my area of practice. Slight spillovers are okay, but majorly not going into everything. Moreover, more or less, this is my niche and this is my values, and I'm doing this because, yeah, this is what I'm good at. So that is something I think is a way to take responsibility, and coming out of it in an overall practice, I feel having certain policies that we can create for ourselves, starting from consent to boundaries to pointers that we can share with clients, including safeguarding areas, right? Keep them, what do I say? Keep them well informed where to go during emergencies. We might not be available all the time. In that as well, right? All aspects of safeguarding that we can from our end do for the client. So this is one is the inner journey and the alignment, another is the safeguarding on policies and boundaries that we can give the client.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Tendril.
just adding on to that, I think like we one of the things that happens quite organically when you're part of an organization is that you get trained. You are part of training. You're part of something. Like you keep getting some, some training keeps happening. But when you're in private practice, if you put your head in the ground, you're not going to get trained at all. Like you can go 6 years with no professional development. And so one of the big responsibilities that I took very early on was that I wanted to do one substantial training every year. And so that was a goal I set for myself right at the beginning, that there was at no point was I going to kind of say that I'm done, like I'm not going to do any training this year. Every year I had to plan for something substantial. When I say substantial, I mean like a proper certification, not like a small course, but like a proper substantial thing that would enhance or just kind of open my mind to something completely different. And I think that because of that, like as an independent practitioner, you grow in your as a professional as well. And otherwise you can be an independent practitioner but not grow at all. So there are a lot of therapists who are like 15-20 years experience, but they still are using the same skills that they learned in their masters or their MPhil, and that's very unfortunate. Like you want to keep growing, you want to keep kind of developing yourself, staying curious about what's new and what's exciting, and you also are changing as a person. So at some point maybe I was a certain kind of therapist, but I realized that now I'm not that kind of therapist. I want to do different kinds of work, and that means that I have to train myself in that direction as well. Because I can't just wade into it, with no experience or no training. And because of the kind of continuous, almost yearly trainings, one of the things, of course, then you're constantly on the lookout, right? You're constantly on the lookout, like what is the next big training? What is the next big, when is the next big speaker or someone coming to India to do like a big training? And so you're constantly on the lookout. Because of that, you get plugged into different networks, because you do these trainings which are substantial, which also offer a lot of like hands-on practice, and you get a lot of supervision as well. You also develop your network. People get to know you get to know other people in other cities, in other places who are kind of running these big associations. And in general, you become a much more confident therapist, because you're constantly having your skills evaluated by people who are not your friends or not your kind of peer supervision group. These are like completely random people who will kind of say that this is not how you do it. Like you have to kind of take care. And it's really kind of mind opening when you're with these completely different sets of therapists, different sets of associations. And I think that just makes you much more confident. I think that is one of the things that it has done for me. At least it has made me much more confident in my skills, because I feel like, yes, I know this. And of course, that also means that you budget throughout the year for your training. So it's not like you get the money and then we spend the money. It's like I have to put aside, because these trainings are not going to be inexpensive. So you're going to have to say that, okay, I have to put aside a certain amount of my income for trainings. And that means that you are prioritizing your development as a therapist.
Right? So, Kedar emphasizing on personal therapy and supervision, Tendril talking about aligning with self, the self awareness, and constantly evaluating with your own values, attitudes that could be befitting with the clientele. And Rebecca, I think skill updation and looking at the need of the client and addressing the responsibility that you can hold for yourself as well as the client. I think all three of you have given wonderful, have shared wonderful thoughts here. Thank you for that. So just to highlight here, since supervision has come into picture, right? When would you decide that you need supervision? Or how would you decide that you need supervision? Because there can be a little tricky situation there. Sometimes you might feel that okay, there's something that you're unaware or you're stuck, and you might think about maybe peer supervision or meeting your supervisor. It could also be just okay, let me just find some resources, because a lot of people outside, you can see social media resources or website resources are being used and acting out as these resources being sufficient, right? With so many challenges, when and how would you decide that supervision is required for, be it a case or be it session based? How, what would you all suggest here?
I think personally for me, I would suggest that it's always good to have some kind of supervision running at all times. Like, and that's just a personal preference again, because it's private practice and you're alone. Like, if it's not peer supervision, then it should be some kind of a study group. If it's not some kind of a study group, then it should be some kind of like the one-on-one supervision or mentoring. But like I feel like there should be something running at, you are meeting somebody at least on a monthly cadence, like that something is happening on a monthly cadence. And I feel like that's just a good thing to kind of have, that even if I'm not kind of constantly seeing an individual supervisor, at least am I at least a part of some group that is meeting. I think some regular thing should be ongoing.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough on what Rebecca just said, that continuous support and supervision. That's something that should be there. Some the times when I have felt I need to specifically get to my supervisor in between these regular supervision is one, when when a particular client or the healing process that we tried is still stuck with me. I'm still affected by what is happening to the client, right? For example, if they come with a adverse childhood experience, or they're coming from a broken home, or with their own trauma issues and concerns in it, and if it is really stuck with me, I'd always like to go back to a supervisor just to make sure I'm not working from an attachment angle, but I'm actually still being only the therapist. That's one. Second, of course, whenever we're like stuck, okay, I don't know what to do, what's happening. So these are some of the times going back, or sometimes values don't match. We don't realize this before we take on a client. Sometimes the client is just sitting in there and talking about something, and then it's completely off the roof. You're like, what? What are you even talking? So those are the times. So when it doesn't align with the values, when it's stuck, or when something really affects me as a therapist from the story my client has said, are the times I specifically want to meet a supervisor. Otherwise, keep it going. Always keep it going.
I think the first thing I would like to say is that start go to a supervisor even before you start with your first client. And it's to think about what is for, not just about your client. It's about, I mean, you hold your clients even before you start working with them. I mainly run groups, and I mean, I've thought of a group 2 years before I actually started the group, right? And I've been thinking about my group all the time, and I've been in supervision in spaces of it, and I've been talking about my group, and all the preparation work that goes into it, that also goes into supervision work. And the second thing was that that I think you should be in supervision all the time. There's no when this happens and that happens, because you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what's in the unconscious. You don't know what's outside of your awareness, and it's someone else who can tell you that.
case, like Yalung talks about having a group or having supervision, would it's not just to talk about the difficulties as a therapist you might experience, but it is also a safe space where a case discussion can help you gain your own perspectives in terms of what you did and where did that lead to, or maybe what could have been better in the process. And there's always something to learn from narrating these experiences. So be it with a friend, like a counselor, or be it with a mentor or a group of psychologists, something to take back with you, right? Thank you. And I'm just checking with Samson, do we have some time, or because I have a couple more questions, quite excited, but I'm wondering about the time constraint.
Maybe we can check with the panelist and proceed with it. If they're okay with extending the time, then we can go
Yeah, no,
forward.
I'm also concerned about the audience questions. Do we have some
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, we have plenty of questions to be
Then
asked.
we will stick to questions, because I would want to hear questions from audience. 10 different minds coming up with 10 different questions are better than one mind coming with little questions, right?
Shoot,
So that will be
something should.
always exciting.
Sure, sure. So I'll start off with the first question. So the first one of the question was, what are your thoughts about therapy being finite, that is closing, or it is terminating once the goal is reached? So what are your thoughts about this?
I personally, in my journey, feel that go for it. That's a very good thing to have. So you set a goal, and if you've reached the goal, do talk about termination and continue if and only if the client has a new goal to set. Otherwise, what I have noticed is sometimes this becomes a routine and then it forms an attachment, and therapy moves from being a healing space to something else. Because we are talking about building relationship with clients. It's not like any other profession where, oh, you've come and consult, gone. No. So I say go for it, always set a goal and initiate termination when that goal is, it can be any number of goals that the client wants, right? But when that set is over, definitely initiate termination, unless and until the client really wants to come back with a definite goal to work again.
Sure. Thank you. Then
I just want to add on to that.
yes, yes.
I'm sorry.
Sure, sure.
I work long term, so a year, 2 years, in groups, and so people will come in and people will leave when they want to come in and when they want to leave, um, and so it's just to facilitate conversations about leaving, about staying, and stuff like that. But I think it's just part of life, like the way people come into our lives and leave. Same thing happens in a group, in a long term group for me. And I don't work with goals, but I work with just people's journey, slightly different, I suppose, my approach.
Yeah, I think
Just adding one more.
sorry. No, I was just saying that I think it depends on your approach and depends on your kind of your therapeutic orientation. I think whether you kind of terminate at the end, and if you kind of have a different therapeutic orientation, then it's kind of you do have more open-ended spaces. And for me as well, like for me, the how it kind of works is as the client's needs are, like the cadence of the sessions is more, and as they don't need it, then they kind of space out. But then when they need the space again and they feel like they need to talk again, then they come back and the cadence again goes back. So I kind of leave it up to them, and kind of scheduling next sessions and things is completely up to the client. It's not something that I prescribe to them. I kind of don't tell them you must come back next week. I say if you want, you come back, and then it's up to them to kind of take the journey forward at the cadence that they want. So I think it kind of depends on your therapeutic orientation. Yeah.
So as long as it is helping the client, and as long as one or the other goal is addressed, and as a therapist, we know that the client is not developing an attachment or a dependency here, but then there is a genuine concern to address. And even as a therapist, you're comfortable to work with the client for a concern, right? Then there is no fixed goal. That's what I gather here.
Well, I was thinking that even if there is an attachment or dependency, that's also part of the therapeutic journey.
Absolutely.
But it's also just to be aware of it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
mean, sometimes we need it, right? I mean, it does help with our finances, but it's helpful to note whose need is it, and to talk through that process and work through that process.
Again, what kind of an
And
attachment, how healthy it is. So it goes probably
yes.
into a whole different discussion there.
Mm. Mm.
And why I was emphasizing on going for a termination is I have seen how initiating and going through a termination process kind of gives this closure to clients. That they're like, okay, hey, I came in for this, then I healed out of this, and here I am going back with this. They can always come back. They take a break, or they say, okay, I know this is termination session, but then I want to book again next week and start with a new goal. So it's about that closure. And one, it can just be one goal, and we tend to work with that client for like 1 or 2 years also, because that it does some healing journeys do take a long time. Yeah, like it's a mix. It depends on the orientation. Yes. Agree on that.
Sure. Thank you. So since you're talking about break, one of the person have asked about when do you need to take a break from private practice? Like when do you notice a break? What is that burnout while you're working from home as a counselor?
There's
I
no
think
definitive time.
no, I think we've addressed that, right? I'm not sure if this question came recently or was it in the beginning of the session. More or less, like, aligning with yourself and being aware of how your work is taking its shape. And discussion with your therapist or your supervisor would be one of the ways. But apart from that, apart from what we have already discussed, if there are any other thoughts from the panelists, definitely we would love to hear them.
I think when I was very early on in my practice, I realized I needed a break when I was actually happy when clients canceled sessions. I realized, okay, if I'm celebrating this, I really need a break. So then I was like, okay, let me take some time off. And I think sometimes your body kind of gives you these cues, right? You find that happiness. Oh, I have this evening off. Like, then okay, something's very wrong. Like, you can't be celebrating when clients are canceling sessions. So yeah, I think there are certain things your body tells you, and you just have to pick up on them.
Yeah,
Those are the
it's
red
also
flags for
very
therapists.
personal. Yeah.
Sorry, Tendril. Go ahead.
No. Yes, they are the red flags. I was going to say, okay. Uh,
Yeah, I think you said it was
Very
personal.
personal.
It is subjective. Changes from person to person.
Sorry. Yes, it is. It is subjective. I remember in my first and second year of independent practice, I used to work 7 days in a week, because weekdays for other clients and then weekends for my clients who can't show up on weekdays. And then after those years, I realized definitely take at least 1 or 2 days break in a week. Never go 7 days. Or if you do think you are accommodating, make sure there's like a half a day in the weekend that's for just for yourself or something. So that way planning is very important, because that really takes you to burnout for sure. So don't do therapy without break at all throughout the week or something like that. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yes. Uh, can I move to the next question? Anybody can take it up,
Yes.
or who
You
is
seem very
ready for?
happy, Satsit, reading this question.
Because I was eagerly
Feel
waiting
very
to ask questions. Because I personally have a few questions to be asked as well, right? Okay. So yeah, one of the questions has been asked is, so what is the biggest strength that has helped you in this journey? Though you might have answered this, maybe not telling it briefly though, maybe like pointers uh, from your own experiences, like what helped you.
self-awareness.
Okay.
Self work and personal therapy.
Okay.
Having a partner who was supportive.
Great.
So maybe can I add this, Rebecca? A partner, yes, definitely in your case, but otherwise, no, even like Kedar
Someone who's
began, no,
supportive. Yeah.
someone who's supporting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like this all single one word answer. It was brilliant there. That
Definitely a
shows how
support
much
system.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, all of you are aware and confident there. Yes, Samson. Next
Sure.
question.
Um, so when do you know that private practice is not working for me?
When you can't take the loneliness anymore. When you've reached that point where, hey, hereafter existing just all by myself, even though I have all this support, is when you realize, hey, okay. And always, this is a point I wanted to say, during the initial years for client acquisition as well, attach and affiliate yourself with other organizations and as many places possible, so that you don't hit the lonely journey right away. You do have teams and people you're constantly working with, but that one point is when the loneliness hits you the max, you decide that's not for me and move to the next.
I don't know is my answer.
Honest one.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it would be like, if say some, if you just felt like you were not, like, I very strongly believe in kind of resonance in what you're doing. Like, if you're doing something and you feel like you're actually resonating with the work that you're doing, if you feel like there is no resonance, your clients are not resonating with you, it's not kind of your practice doesn't seem to be growing after a lot of effort, like, if you feel like there's just, you're not thriving in that environment, then maybe it's just not the right time. Maybe you just need to get some more structured support and then come back to private practice a little bit later. Sometimes maybe just the timing's off. So I feel like just listen to what's happening within you. If you feel like it's just like a lot of resistance all the time, then there's no point in just fighting against something that's not happening organically.
I just want to add a couple of thoughts here from the Alumni Association's work. See, there are multiple events, right? I think every week through Alumni Association, Varsha has designed this, Horizon series. And remember that private practice, if it's not for everyone, and it's completely fine with it. And if you're not okay with private practice and you feel like it's not working for you, there are multiple other things that you could do, be it with an organization or maybe change something within the mental health field itself. So the various subjects that has been addressed through these panel discussions can definitely give a lot of insight. So please go back to the YouTube channel and see other events that has already happened and few more events that is scheduled in next few weeks, right? Will definitely give insights to probably choose what would be a best suited or an alternate option. Okay, and it's completely fine if you're not going to align with private practice after a point in time. There are no regrets there, right? It's generally the societal pressure saying that, oh my god, I've begun, now how can I go back to probably affiliated to an organization or something. There's no hard and fast rule there. Just a quick thing I also want to tell is, if our experience is a very lonely journey because it's just with the client and yourself, you're constantly working one on one or maybe with group or couples and so on, still as a practitioner you're alone, right? It's extremely important to have some group activity. It could be with family or with the social circle or something, because with others, when they work in groups, when the different professions are with as a team, people would definitely desire for the me time, alone time, and the solitude, right? The same way, when we are always alone, we need some chaos with group chatters and everything. So I think probably switching every now and then, like Tendril was mentioning, half a day break or weekend break, something like this, and utilizing that time for your group activity to feel that okay, you have a sense of belongingness with a larger part of the society, will definitely reduce loneliness. So I should just highlight that to Tendril's thought. Sorry, I think I
I
took
have
over your
one
time.
personal experience to share. I had, it's like I founded an organization to run a practice for 4 years, and I took a job last year. So it's okay to switch and try when you want to change. And I am going to go back to individual practice as well, right? In some time. So it's really okay to go back and forth. It's not a linear process. Is something I wanted to emphasize, and I am a living testimony for trying all of this. So yeah, calculated risk, but at the end of the day, it's okay that you come out of your individual practice and then go back as well. No harm.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So one more question from my own side. So I wanted to find out, I mean, what enabled you to find your niche? So you said that there are times wherein certain things we might not be good enough with. Maybe we find our niche, right? Like how did you find your niche? I don't know if I'm clear with my question.
Supervision, self work, and constant keeping up with the trend, like learning and moving forward, these three things.
I've hated groups since I've ever known, right? Because I never belonged to any group. So I remember when Sangeeta gave us Sangeeta was our trainer. Um, she was teaching the paper. She gave us the assignment to talk about groups. I'm like, what shit is this? What kind of assignment is this? But it stemmed from the fact that I never belonged to any group. And I've studied in 12 schools, never fit in anywhere. And so it is it's more psychodynamic in the sense that my practice is stemmed from, or my niche of being a group therapist stemmed from the fact that I never belonged in any group. So that was my formation of my niche.
I think one of the ways in which I found my niche was kind of again by doing a lot of the trainings. Like sometimes I would do a training and I'd be like, oh no, I don't like this at all. I've got I've finished the training and I got the certificate, but I just know this is not going to fit into my practice. I have no room for it. I don't have a natural affinity for it. And it just it does, it just collides with me as a person and as a therapist. And so I think just doing, like keeping an open mind, doing a lot of different kinds of trainings exposes you to what you don't like, and hence you learn what you like. And so, I think that just being open minded, being willing to kind of go, and I may not know whether this is an absolute right fit for me. We kind of dabbled a little bit with kind of career counseling at some point. I thought, okay, this is a good thing. Like, let me do it. But then as I went into that world, I realized, oh my goodness, like I just don't. It's just not like it's not me. It doesn't have any space in my practice. And I did actually spend quite a bit of time kind of training in that, but then I realized it was not my skill set. But then when as I moved into more trauma work, I realized that there was so much resonance with that, and I realized that it really fit with me as a therapist. And because I kind of enjoyed it so much, I kind of trained more and more, then got my EMDR certification, and now I'm doing my PhD in EMDR and kind of incorporating it into couples therapy. So it kind of it kind of not flew flowed from my dabbling with different kinds of trainings and things like that. So I think that one of the ways to find your niche is to just just do a lot of trainings, go for a lot of different programs and see what you like, and what you think fits with your personality as a therapist. And I always find like certain trainings have, you do it and you realize I'm never going to use it. And the hallmark of a training that fits well with you is that as soon as you get back to your practice, that first client that walks into the door, you're like, I'm using this on you, and you're like, no, I really like it and it fits well. And, I'm able to do it with the person. And that just shows like there are other trainings that you do and you're like 6 months after the training, I've never done it once. I'm looking at the protocol and the literature and never practiced it. So, sometimes that is the way to kind of realize what kind of a therapist you are, what fits with you, what doesn't. The best trainings are the ones that you use as soon as you get back. And that is what makes you passionate about that kind of therapy. So that's good way of finding out what your niche is.
Sure, I'll keep this in mind when I have to find my niche, though. On an ending note, I wanted to ask one question. What was the one question? What is the one liner or two liner that you want to say to any what do I say, budding counselors, like any independent budding counselors? It can exceed that, but I'm just kidding.
Everyone has imposter syndrome, so it's not just you. Don't worry about feeling like you have it all sorted out. Like everybody feels like they're not, like I don't know what I'm doing. But I think at the start, like that is something that you just work with, and then you build that competency from there. So don't feel like you need to wait for the emotion of feeling confident to actually be a good therapist. So yeah.
What's coming out of somebody who's experienced for 12 odd years, I take it up. Yes, I will do consider it. Yes, so then Kedar, anything that you want to add?
I would say, no matter what, keep going in the journey. because it takes its own time to make us feel as confident therapists, or even to feel as like the right therapist. Because the initial years, a lot of beginning counselors usually come to me, or what I hear is, I'm not sure of what I'm doing. Even after 4 5 years, even we are not sure of what we are doing sometimes, but all we need to do is keep going. Just, you know, be there in that alignment and keep going. Be curious. I think be curious is something I keep telling myself also. Be curious of yourself, your client, what's happening. Always you also be that third person. Sometimes after the session is over, probably take that third person view and see what just happened between me and that person over there. So this one. So be curious. It's okay to have those anxieties in the beginning. Just keep going.
This feels like a Master Shifu moment that I have to produce a pearl of wisdom. Uh, but I mean, I think if I had to say something, if you're interested in private practice, please start, and then everything you'll figure it out. But please start. And I have one question for you, Samson. You have a lot of questions for us.
Yes.
When are you starting your private practice?
I already began when Rebecca was talking about what are the struggles she had as a beginner, no? When she had to set up a thing, no? So all of that I could relate. I was just nodding. Yes, this is what is happening right now. I can relate very well with it. So me and one of my friend are doing it. So it is very much relevant for me what we are saying. So yeah, thank you, Kedar, for putting me on the spotlight. We will talk after this. Sure. Anything Anil would end with?
I'm sure there are so many thoughts to discuss, so many questions to ask, and probably unravel a lot of challenges or success stories. But unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end, right? So the cliche dialogue, I would say that we have to come to an end at this moment. But I'm sure the audience members can contact each one of you or each one of us and the alumni members, or anyone, right? So feel free to get in touch with anyone to probably seek support, like we discussed in this session, right? None of us would look at each other as being a mentor or mentee, anything, but just like Rebecca mentioned, wanting to support each other is more important. Let us build a community coming together to heal and give that space when there's so much of storm chaos around us. It's just within us, and maybe with people with whom we are comfortable with, can hold that space for each other, right? So I'm really glad that all three of you have come together at several points, have had such thoughts, strong thoughts, resonating with each other, and at the same time talking about three different backgrounds, three different affiliations, coming in and out of practices, challenges, and at the same time standing strong, having your ground, reassuring with your stories, with your practices, with your approach. I'm sure this has been a lot helpful to not only the members who are present at this moment, and also to the members who are going to witness this whole session later on the YouTube channel. So I would just say thank you for being so generous in sharing your thoughts and making it worthwhile, like as worthwhile you all are in individual capacities. Thank you so much. And not to forget Sanson being so easy in coordinating and questions and answers and everything, making it much more organic, impromptu, and authentic there. And definitely Alumni Association and Varsha collaborating together and creating a wonderful series, which I would say it's definitely an archival of information for not only for the Montfort students, but psychologists at large or mental health professionals at large. So this is such a great documentation of work, a resource probably when like Kedar was mentioning, just start somewhere. I think any individual having confusions about anything with regard to mental health can just look into these YouTube series or the Horizon series, the channel, and just begin somewhere. There would be a spark that can get lit here, Right? Thank you all. That's all I would say.
Thank you, Anil, for moderating the session. And before we could finish, just want to say what is there for the next week. So for the next week, we have something interesting for you, Tendril, as well. So this is Meet the Music, Art, and Dance Movement Therapist. So something that you might be interested in. Most of the others might be interested as well. So that's what's there in the line. And I look up to all of you guys, something wherein I know that you know what you can start, and it is okay. There are people who have done it, so you can also do it, right? Thank you all, guys, for your sharing. For sharing your knowledge and your time. Okay, so that's Samson.
Thank
We're
you,
finishing.
Samson.
Cool.
Thank
See
you,
you.
Samson. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Varsha, and everybody else part of the Alumni Association for bringing all of us together. It's like I am also meeting with other people and networking. Now I know Rebecca and Kedar and Samson, all of these people I didn't know earlier. So thank you so much for having us here. It was a really amazing experience.
Yeah, I had fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
Hope to meet you all someday. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right.
Right.
This is Varsha
Take
here.
care.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for this incredible session. And just to say, there's a huge team of alumni association, even coordinators being a part of this, and they're juggling with their day-to-day work and putting a lot of time and effort to bring this all together. And it's a common dream among all most of the alumni members to set up something of this sort. So I would like to share all your gratitude that you called my name for to all of the whole team who's being a big part of this and putting
Yes.
things together. Big shout to them. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Right there.
Okay.
Yes, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
See you all.
Bye.